So, Waite Latin 2 students, welcome back. I wanted to help you guys go over your assignment today. The English Latin sentences are always a little tricky, so I like to go over them with you in great detail. So make sure you've done exercise C before I look over these with you, and then make your corrections. It's okay if they're not all correct. That's very rare that they are, but you can learn from your mistakes and get ready for your quiz. We will have our quiz on this chapter coming up on Friday, so I want you guys to be ready for that. Make sure you're going through and drilling yourself on the irregular comparison. That's what this chapter is all about. It's a very heavy vocab chapter. So go through and make sure you can do positive comparative superlative of all the irregulars you've learned in this chapter, right? So you're going from bonus, melior, optimus, malus, peor, pessimus. Practice like that because you'll have those a lot on the quiz. Some of them this chapter don't have positive, so they might be like exterior, exterius in the comparative, extremus in the superlative. Some of them lack a positive, so you want to review each of those. And again, you still have some time to practice because Friday is the quiz. Make sure to come into my office hours if there's something you don't understand about chapter 35, so I can help you get ready for the quiz coming up on Friday. Okay, so let's look at exercise C. You can compare your answers to what I came up with here, excuse me, and we'll go from there. The first one was, here it is, the right wing of our army was coming towards the large plain. So for this one, I put dextrum cornu, nostri exercitus ad magnum campum muniebat. So the right wing, dextrum cornu. Remember this word's neuter, cornu, and so I had to use a neuter adjective here to modify it. The right wing of our army, I made genitive, nostri exercitus. These things agree with each other. This is fourth declension, and this is second declension masculine, but they do agree with each other. Now the right wing was coming, so it's imperfect, so it's winiebat, and then towards the large plain was ad magnum campum, and that's accusative place to which. So just making sure the preposition's right there. Okay, so that was good. That's a little review of our fourth declension nouns because there's two of them in that particular sentence. And what about number 2? At midnight, shouts were heard in the middle of the town. This one I came up with media nocte, clamores in medio opido audiebantur. There's also another thing you could have used. I'll talk about that for the verb. But at midnight would be an ablative of time when. So notice how I made these two words ablative, media nocte, and that word is feminine. That's why it's media. You don't need any word for at because remember time constructions don't take prepositions in Latin. So there is no special word for that. Now the shouts is the subject, clamores, I made nominative. And then in the middle of the town, in medio opido. You don't need a genitive, even though the word of is here, because medio means middle of. So this is simply an ablative place where in the middle of the town. And then finally, the verb, the shouts were heard, definitely passive, right? Because the shouts were heard, it's happening to them. So it could have either been imperfect passive, or I could even see perfect passive there. There's a little bit of overlap. So that's why I gave you the option of using either of these for the passive verb. It has to be passive though, okay? So a lot of good practice there on number 2. How about number 3? What do you guys think? The cavalry on our left wing are nearer to the camp than to the river. So this one I came up with, equites a sinistro cornu sunt propiores castris quam flumini. So the cavalry is plural because cavalry is like a lot of horseback soldiers, right? So equites, plural. And then if you looked in your dictionary, you had to look this one up, but the phrase on the left wing, even though it's the word on, is kind of a specific idiomatic phrase, and that would be a sinistro cornu. That word is used there instead of in. So if you use in, it's understandable, but a is a more correct term there, and a takes the ablative. So sinistro cornu are both ablative. Now, the cavalry are nearer, sunt propiores. This word is one of our words from this chapter. Notice I made it plural to agree with the cavalry. It's nominative plural. It's a predicate adjective, actually. And then finally, nearer to the camp. So what case does camp go into? Well, nearer, propior, is one of those words we learned in that last chapter that take the dative to complete their meaning. A lot of them we learned do. And so camp is dative, near to the camp, castris. And then river is also dative, than, quam, flumini. This is dative of river also. So remember those adjectives that take the dative. You will see those, on future quizzes also. Okay, number 4. What do you guys think? This one has a semicolon, which kind of makes it 2 separate sentences. This man is better than the worst people, but shall we call him good? So the first part of the sentence, I put hic es melior quam pessimi. So this man is better. Now this is one of your irregulars, melior. That comes from bonus, but it's very irregular. Melior, than the worst, quam pessimi. For worst people here, I just use a substantive. I made a substantive pessimi, the worst people. Another thing you could have done there is use the ablative comparison. You could have said melior pessimis. Maybe some of you thought of doing that, but either one could work. But shall we call him good? The verb sounds future, doesn't it? But shall we call? So I did future. Appellabimus is the future. It's a question, so appellabibus ne. And then finally, him is the object here. So eum bonum, both of these words coming up in the accusative. So a two-part sentence here. They each have their own verb because that's what a semicolon does. It kind of separates two grammatically separate sentences with separate verbs and everything. Okay, but this is a good review of several of our irregulars. Here's one. Also, pessimi is the irregular superlative of malus. Malus. Okay, so that was a good one. Number 5, the teacher is very eager for more books. I always am. Magister cupidissimum plurium librorum est. So a couple things here. Very eager is a superlative, of course. So cupidissimus, there's a superlative. Now, even though eager for something sounds almost dative, we learned in the previous chapter that cupidus takes the genitive. In Latin, you're eager of something, even though we say that differently in English. So I put more books here in the genitive. Plurium librorum. This adjective pluralis that means more is third declension. That's why this is the genitive plurium librorum. Okay, so cupidus, desirous, takes the genitive. That's very important. Okay. Number 6, very many citizens were not able to flee when the town was taken. So this one we have pluribi cives fugere non poterunt ubi oppidum captum est, or capiebatur. I'll explain that. But very many is a superlative. It's not just many, multi, but it's very many. That's superlative. So the superlative of multi is plurimi. Plurimi cives were not able. That verb to not be able or to be able is possum. We did a whole chapter on that a while back. And so non poterunt. I could also see perfect here if any of you guys put potuerunt, possibly, but it does need to be either imperfect or perfect. And then to flee is a complementary infinitive, fugere. And finally, when the town was taken, if a clause starts with the when, we call that a temporal clause. It tells the time in the sentence. So ubi oppidum captum est, the town was taken, passive captum est, or it could have been imperfect passive capiebatur, but either way you do it, it does have to be passive. Okay, this word is neuter, so I made this neuter to agree to match up with it. Okay, so look over number 6. If any of these you still need to go back and listen to my explanation again or pause it for a sec, make sure to do that. That's what's helpful about videos. You can kind of go at your own pace. And number 7, we have from the top of the mountain, we can look at the sea across the plains. De sumo monte spectare possumus mare trans campos is what I came up with here. So from the top, this one I use de because if you're on a mountain, it's kind of like down from, and that's what de means. De takes the ablative. Now top of is sumo. You don't need a genitive for mountain because that word sumo has top of in its meaning. So there's no genitive here. It's just ablative going with de. So de sumo monte. That's the superlative we learned in this chapter. We can look. Now notice how it's not just we look, but it's we can look. So for the word can, you need possum again. Possum in the present tense specifically. So possumus spectare. We can look. We are able to look at the sea. Now the sea is going to be the direct object. It should be accusative. Remember this word is neuter, mare. It's a neuter I stem. So mare, maris, marie, mare, and then marie. So accusative is mare. It's the direct object. And finally, across the plains would be accusative. So it's trans campos is the accusative, trans campos. Okay, so there's a lot there. Number 7. How'd you guys do with number 8? In that town, we shall find more horses and more grain. So this one we got in illo oppido, in that town, we shall find, this is future tense, inveniemos, inveniemos. More horses is the direct object, so plures equos, and more grain, plus frumenti. Now I want to explain this part because why do those look different? More horses and more grain, why are they different? Well, a little reminder, there's 2 words in this chapter that mean more, and they're used in different circumstances. The word plures, plura, is a third declension adjective meaning more that's only used with plural nouns. So if you have more horses or more, anything plural, more bullas, more dogs, you would use that. If it's more of something singular, like more grain, more water, more money, that's going to use this word plus, which is a noun. It's a neuter noun, actually, that means more, and it's followed by the partitive genitive, more of something. So I know it's a little tricky because in English they both just sound like more, but in Latin they're actually different ideas and different translations. So that's why this one's plural, because it's pluris equus and use that adjective. This one, though, is singular, so it uses the noun plus. By the way, what case is plus here? Well, it's neuter, so that is the accusative. A neuter word, the nominative, accusative are always the same. Plus, pluris, pluri, plus. Pluri would be how this word declines, okay? And this, again, is partitive genitive. So a lot there going on with number 8. That was one of the tougher sentences, and the verb here I made future. Remember, that's a fourth conjugation verb. Okay, so quite a bit there. Number 8, make sure to remember those 2 uses of more for the quiz. Number 9, which is the oldest of your 3 sons? Quist tuorum trium filiorum maximus natu est. So which is, notice how I use the interrogative pronoun here. Even though it's which, it kind of sounds like a neuter. It's not, because you know you're talking about sons, you're talking about boys, so it's going to be masculine. And then the oldest is an idiom. Remember, there is no word that's technically a superlative of senex. You have to use the idiom maximus natu to mean oldest. So which is the oldest, and then of your 3 sons would be partitive genitive. So that's why it's tuorum trium filiorum. That's where of your 3 sons came in, partitive genitive. Okay, so that's a good one. And then finally, sometimes the last one's tough. Let's see. Near the bridge, which is next to the town, the river is very deep. I came up with prope pontem, qui proximus opido est, flumen est altissimum. So we have our preposition here that means near. Prope pontem, near the bridge, takes the accusative, and then a relative clause. Now, what's the antecedent? Pontem, which is masculine singular, and then when it's in its own clause, which is the subject of the clause, so I left it nominative. So qui, and the next to is proximus. Proximus takes the dative, so next to the town would be dative. Town, opido, dative right here. And then finally, that's the relative clause. The main verb is. The river is very deep. So flumen est altissimum. Notice very deep here is a superlative, and I left the neuter ending on there because this word is neuter. Flumen, fluminous is neuter. Okay, so there's number 10, and there's a relative clause in there, which is always good for us to practice. Okay, so I'd say these sentences were challenging, some of them, and hopefully went through and made your corrections and saw what you did right and wrong. Hopefully that helps a lot. Friday's the quiz, so you guys still have multiple days to prepare for it, but just make sure you're studying a little bit each day. Make sure you're doing the practices and stuff. I will give you some more practice assignments this week to kind of hone in and zone in on what you're going to be doing to study, and then we will take the quiz on Friday. Make sure to pop into my office hours if anything we talked about today doesn't make perfect sense. I can help you go through it and understand it. Okay? Hope you guys are doing very excellent, having a good Tuesday, and I will check in with you tomorrow with some additional practice. Walete.